This morning I'm going to recap the structure of a neuron. Okay, and while you're consolidating your thoughts, I hope Ms. Ng shared about why we're studying about the nervous system. But I think I've shared many times why we're doing so. We just came from the endocrine system. The endocrine system is nothing but a communication system. In this communication system, we use hormones. The next chapter, this one, the nervous system, is just our body's second means of communication within our body. This means of communication, we don't make use of hormones, we make use of nerve impulses. These nerve impulses are electrical in nature, and they travel along the neurons, which are specialized cells of the body. Neurons are really just animal cells, cells of your body, but their function is to transmit electrical signals along themselves. And you can imagine, running through every part of our body, you'll find these neurons transmitting electrical nerve impulses. For me to raise my arm and do this. Even as I speak, nerve impulses are transmitted through neurons to my jaw to move my muscles. So it's quite an amazing thing that is happening right here. Nerve impulses do not travel through our blood. They travel through the cells, these nerve cells or neurons. You know the longest neuron in our body can go up to around more than 1 meter. And what I mean when I say more than 1 meter is that the cell, its elongated part, goes to almost more than 1 meter. There's a cell in our body that is that long. If you want to know what the longest neuron in your body, the rough length of it, you go and find where your tailbone is. From your tailbone all the way to the tip of your toes, that's how long that neuron has to be to transmit the signal from the bottom of your tailbone all the way to the tip of your toes. That's how long one would be. Now, have we started recording? Okay, thank you. So, this morning, we're just going to recap the basic structure, the basic nerve cell in our body. I'm going to point to various parts, and I'd like you to quickly recap. So, put your iPads down, squeeze your brain. Okay, our brain is part of the nervous system, a very powerful part of the nervous system. So there is A, there is B, there is C, okay, there is D, E, F, G. Okay, feel free to discuss with each other first before I shoot. Bonus one, H. What's the difference? Okay, your time is up. Let's run through the various parts of a neuron. When I call your name, you can choose any part. So you get harder and harder actually. Okay, let's begin first with Wensin. Wensin, pick any alphabet. A is dendrites. Dendrite is the singular, dendrites the plural. Plural means many. Wenxin? Please nominate a friend. Or maybe an enemy. Who? Shreya? Okay, Shreya, I cannot tell if you are an enemy or friend.
C is cell body.
C is cell body. Yeah. Okay, Shreya, your turn, nominate someone. Bu Zhixuan. Bu? B is dendron. Thank you. What is the difference between dendron and dendrite? Zhixuan? In your own words. There's no definition for it. Yeah, brilliant. Dendron is the part that connects the dendrites to the cell body. It is like if this is the tree trunk, these are all the branches coming up. Okay, dendron is the main connector to the cell body. You can have many dendrons too. Okay, Zhixuan, time for you to attack. Choose a boy, please. How young? Okay, how young? Yeah, which one? E. Okay. How young says E is a, how to spell? Two N's, right? Is it two N's? Okay, it's one cell. Yeah. Okay, then since you're on that, I would like, how you have to nominate someone? I'm going to ask that person you can tell me what D is. Alpha. Alpha. What is D? Axon. Great, okay. D is axon. Okay, this is very important to take note of. Axon is the one that transmits nerve impulses away from the cell body. Okay? Yeah, it's not A for away, it's just nice. Yeah? This is how I remember. Or rather your seniors teach me on how they remember. A for away. Dendrites is the one that will receive the nerve impulse. So they'll receive it, and then after that here you'll transmit away. Do you have any idea of how you can remember D is the one that's going to the cell body? Any ideas? Down? Into? Okay. It's not always down because you see nerves need to go up to my head, right? So, I don't know, you think about it. If anyone thinks of something, D, to help us remember, is going to the cell body, let us know. But I like the A for away. That one helps me a lot. Okay? So you can see axons have these Schwann cells wrapping around. Okay, what does that look like? I don't know if Ms. Ng talked about it, but supposing this is very fat and thick neuron. This is the cell body, these are the dendrites. I fail to be able to branch out, these are the dendrons. I'm not able to branch out dendrites for now. Okay, it's a cell body and then this is a very thick axon. Yeah? So, what are Schwann cells? Schwann cells, as name suggests, they are cells. They are flat cells, right? Cells that are very flat. And not only are they very flat, they're also quite long. And it allows them to do this. It allows them to wrap around the axon. So that's what Schwann cells do. And so, if you look at your image in your textbook, you'll find this very interesting dissection of a neuron. Over here, this is in your textbook. They show you a Schwann cell. They even show you the nucleus of the Schwann cell. Then this looks like a Swiss roll. Because it really is a Swiss roll. It is a very, very long cell that wraps around the axon. And there are many Schwann cells. Each one of these we see is a Schwann cell that has wrapped around. Yeah? What is, okay, alpha, you can nominate someone. This person will either choose F, G, or H.
Zui.
Zui. Okay, your choice. Okay, which one is no of Rabia? Okay, thank you. Node of Ranvier. So I question for you, how many node of Ranviers do you see on this particular neuron? Quick count. How many node of Ranviers do you see? How many nodes are there? Okay. Who says 5? 4? 3? 2? Okay, so where are the nodes of Ranvier? A node of Ranvier is just any part that is flanked by Schwann cells and not wrapped. So for example, this region over here is an exposed axon, not wrapped by Schwann cells. It's flanked by Schwann cells. This is one node, this is another node, this is another node, this is another node. Okay? Oh yeah? Why can't we say, oh, this is an axon, is it? Okay, the main reason why we describe this as a node is so that we can properly describe in words how an electrical impulse is transmitted. So we just have this additional vocabulary for that. Okay? We have left with G and H from Zhiwei. Please nominate someone. Henry? Axon terminal. Which one? G. Okay? Axon terminal. As the name suggests, terminal means at the end. Yeah? So at the end of the axon is the terminal. How yeah? Sorry. Henry, next person, last person. You're out, boys. Wait, there's one more. Rohit?
Here to the myelin sheath.
Thank you. So actually, Rohit, if I call this a myelin sheath, what do you think is the definition of a myelin sheath?
I think it's the outer layer of the Schwann cell. Not sure, but
Okay. It is the layer of the Schwann cells. That's what you're referring to. So a Schwann cell refers to each cell, but myelin sheath refers to all the Schwann cell wrapping around the axon. Very rarely will scientists say that these are Schwann cells. They more often will say the axon is wrapped around with a myelin sheath that is made up of Schwann cells. I say again, scientists more often say that the axon is wrapped with myelin sheath, and this is made up of Schwann cells. I find that more common. And then it's a basic recap of the structure of the neuron. Okay, you may go into SLS now. You may still have the time to go through the 3 types of neurons. Yeah, okay. So there are 3 types of neurons. One to receive a signal, one to relay between 2 different neurons, and one to transmit the signal to your effectors. Yeah? Unlikely that we'll ask you to write out the purpose of each part. I can foresee that we may ask you to, maybe it can be MCQ. We could be pointing to various parts of this, and we give a very short statement on its function. I say again, you need to be able to describe in depth the function of each part. Instead, understand the function. We may ask you in a very simple, short MCQ. I may point to the axon terminal. Then I may give a function. You tell me whether correct or wrong. Okay? Yes? Okay, is there a difference in dendron and dendrite? Not exactly. I would say that the dendron is just a thicker, unbranched version of the dendrite. Okay? By the way, all these dendron, dendrite, axon, they are all just extensions of the cell. It is all still cell membrane branching out. Okay? Whereas a regular cell that you know of, animal cell, is round, imagine if I slowly pinch out one segment of the cell membrane, just to pinch it out, and if I keep pulling on this, I'm starting to get an axon. So that's really what an axon or a dendron or dendrite is. It is just the cell membrane being pulled out to make it really long. And what's inside the axon, dendron or dendrite is just cytoplasm. It's really just a cell that's been pinched. Okay? So, Shafika, you did this already, okay? Alright. Now I'm going to gradually move on now. Okay, did Ms. share about the purpose of the myelin sheath? Did she? Okay, I wanted to share with you the purpose of the myelin sheath. In your textbook, it often says the myelin sheath, the presence of it helps to speed up the conduction of nerve impulse. But how can it speed things up? Therefore, you must imagine what happens if I instead have a neuron that has an axon that doesn't come with any myelin sheath. Then we can really see the difference. The difference lies in this. I'll show you a quick video because I think the video shows it very elegantly, the difference.
Body's information superhighway. By using Domino.
Okay, yes. Oh, you watch this Okay, but in this video you saw, right, how if you were to let a string of dominoes run versus if you just place certain dominoes midway, one is much faster than the other. Just a quick recap.
Rampaging ruler, the myelin sheath mover, Dr. Chris! And in lane 2, the great machine, the domino dominator, Dr. Sun! Drivers at the ready, 3, 2, 1, go! Yes! Let's see that again. What a start from Dr. Chris's myelin sheath as it streaks ahead of Dr. Sun's dawdling domino.
And that's what our myelin sheath does, because in a neuron that doesn't come with it, you know what happens? The nerve impulse travels this way. One after another, just slowly transmitting across. But where there are Schwann cells wrapping, the nerve impulse instead just jumps. It travels this way, and then it skips this part of the myelin sheath and goes straight to this node. Then it skips to the next node, to the next node, to the next node, and so on and so forth. So it jumps. Wherever there is a Schwann cell wrapping, it will immediately just jump across to the next node. And that speeds things up very fast. Yes, question? Okay, that's because there's a limit to how far nerve impulse can jump. Yeah? That this Schwann cell, the distance that is created is as far as the nerve impulse can jump. I felt like over here there was a question. Hai? Okay, the purpose of the Schwann cell, if you read sources, they say is to insulate the axon. Right? Insulate means to wrap around to prevent any conduction through its area. Okay? So wherever there are Schwann cells wrapping, the conduction of the nerve impulse doesn't pass through it. Instead, the nerve impulse just comes here, it skips this region and just jumps to the next one. So it jumps, and it's much faster than having to pass through all of it. Yes, Maya? Oh, this cell, where you find it, is it? I would say it is running in between your muscles, right beside your blood vessels. It is surrounded by tissue fluid, yeah, but it is like wiring that runs through various parts of the body.
And the nerve impulse get lost.
Oh, okay. Could the nerve impulse get lost to the tissue fluid? Is it? No, it doesn't. Yes. Good question. For example, do you have an example for us? Okay, so for example, if you look at your diagram in the SLS and in your textbook, we will provide a diagram that looks like that. Yeah? What I notice is that you tend to find myelin sheath whenever the extension is quite long. But when the extension is shorter, sometimes you won't find myelin sheath. Okay, so I think the logic of it is that the longer it is, then you want to put these insulators so that it can jump much faster. I have something very interesting for us. The electrical impulse is not quite the electricity that you know of that passes through the light bulbs. It is actually a different kind of electricity. And once you know it, it makes a little bit more sense. Actually, it's not possible for us to but the electricity that we have is a bit different. You haven't studied electricity yet, right? The definition of electricity, at least a loose definition, electricity. A very loose definition of electricity is the movement of charged particles. The electricity that's coursing through all the wires that leads to lighting of light bulbs. You know what's a charged particle there that's flowing? Not protons, electrons. Electrons is what's flowing when we talk about electricity in the wires. But there are other forms of charged particles that are in our body. Can you think of a charged particle that you can find in your body? What other things may be charged inside your body? Ions. Very good, Ethan. So, ions. And that's actually the electricity that's flowing through our body. We are not conducting electrons, we are actually conducting ions. Salt. So when you go for a run, you deplete yourself of mineral salts. Always ask you to take isotonic drinks. You replenish your salt so that you can, again, get your nerve cells functioning properly. Yes?
Then like, is it possible like, you make the electricity ion and you can connect the wire to the nerve then?
So actually, it is possible to stimulate your nerve cells to function. For example, a few years back I went to acupuncture because I wore boots that were so tight in army to the point that the nerves got damaged and then I couldn't feel my toes anymore. So I went to TCM and then there was acupuncture. Then the first thing they did was, after they insert the needles into my toe, they hook it up to a machine and then they switch it on and they let electricity pulse through. And then the moment it pulsed through, right, my toes started twitching up and down. Uncontrollably. I want to stop also cannot. Just move up and down. So then you may be thinking, oh, that means electricity is passing through my body. Actually, not really. What it's doing is that the acupuncture, what it's doing is that when electricity is coursing through, it causes the dendrites to be stimulated, and from there, it starts to channel ions to flow through. So it's not electricity that's really flowing through, it is more like it's stimulating my nerve cells to channel ions to move. If electricity really flows through you, you'll be fried. Yeah? It's like lightning strike, then you'll be fried. So we do not really have that kind of electricity flowing through. That being said, I found something quite gruesome online. I'm not sure if you want to watch it. You could, if you freshly buy meat from the market, yeah? After all, nerve impulses are no more than salt. That's stimulating it to move, right? So have you ever been to, okay, so for example, have you ever seen videos of where they take octopus that have been freshly killed, then in Japan, right, what they like to do is they pour soy sauce over and then it starts to wriggle. It is not coming back to life, but there is salt in the soy sauce. So when you pour soy sauce, it stimulates the nerve cells to start to conduct nerve impulses. And people have done this on frog legs also. But the frog leg has to be quite fresh. The longer you leave it, the neurons will start to break down, the cell membranes will break down, they will not function anymore. But if it's very fresh,
But I thought like even though the nerves impulses are
Oh, okay. Not exactly, you know. So you don't really need a control center, right, for nerve impulses to flow. The control center is important if you want to process the information. Yeah, if you want to think about it, then it's important to pass through. But actually, not all nerve impulses pass through the brain. Some skip the brain.
You didn't know what to do.
Exactly, so over here, right, it's not passing through any brain. It's just a reflex that's happening. You have some reflexes where they don't even pass through your brain. For example, if you just sit down, and I think you all may have tried before, you give yourself a tap over here, you will start to kick up, and I did not do it on purpose over here. You really, I just aim over here, give it a hit, and you'll kick up. This nerve impulse, every time Jeanette cannot see. Need to. Okay, over here, if you just hit and you kick, and I did not simulate it, I really just kick. What you're doing here is, when you give it a knock, okay, when you give it a knock, you're actually stimulating your sensory neuron to go to your spinal cord, and then immediately the signal sends back to the motor neuron to the knee to kick out. It didn't even go to my brain at all. So not all nerve impulses need to go to the central, to the brain. Okay, y'all want to try? Doesn't work. No, it works, right, if you do not think so much about it. Because if you are thinking about it, you are controlling yourself from kicking. Alternatively, is to get your friend to hit. Okay, where to hit, Actually, where to hit, you have to try. Okay, but sit somewhere in between. Usually, I find what helps is to use something a bit heavy. Yeah? Then it will work. I find what, if you some sick here, I'm going to hit you. Okay, while you are hitting each other, let's watch some frog legs come to life. Okay, birds right now, they are sprinkling salt onto it. And you can see the legs come back to life. But you see, you must remove the skin so that when you pour the salt, right, it directly touches the nerve cells, neurons. You see all the twitching? Sometimes the spasms you feel in your body are all imbalances in salts. You got feel before your spasms? Like you suddenly twitch and then, it's all imbalances in the salts. Okay? So, just to keep you in mind, why am I sharing this? So that you don't think you can control yourself by just plugging yourself into an electrical socket. That's not going to work. That's going to fry you. It's the salts, not electricity per se. So, since Ms. Ng has done this, let's go to the next section. The next section, we talk about how all our neurons are organized. Ms. Ng went through the divisions of the nervous system. Central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, autonomic, somatic. Goodness. Okay, after this video, I have something in the box that I'd like to take out to show all of you.
The function of the nervous system.
Okay, pay attention up. There are 4 divisions of the nervous system that I want you to pay attention to. Okay, you've already sort of learned about 2 of them, but there are 2 more. Okay, we're going to give this video a quick watch, and then after we're going to move on to the next one.
Rapid communication and integration between various organs, as well as with the outside environment. It detects changes within a body and in its surroundings, and responds accordingly. Fast communication is achieved by means of electrical signals known as nerve impulses, which are generated and carried by specialized cells called neurons. The major components of the nervous system are the brain, spinal cord, and nerves.
one is central nervous system. That comprises of your brain and your spinal cord. It's only quite in recent years that I realized there's a distinction between the word spinal cord versus spine. There's a difference. Actually, okay, what you can feel in the back, that is the spine. That is bone. But you know what's at the middle of the bone? That is where the spinal cord is. Okay? The bone actually wraps around the spinal cord to protect it. So actually, when you ever see anything like that, that line in the middle is not referring to your bone. It's referring to what's in the middle of the spine. So if I want to be more accurate, actually surrounding the spinal cord are all your segments of bone. Protect it. And what protects the brain? What's the bone that protects the brain? The skull. So actually for the skull, there is a big bone that protects it. Do you know that your bone is not just one single piece? It's made out of many fragments. If you were to look at a skull, it comes with many zigzag lines. They are like puzzle pieces that fit together. Okay? So that's the thing. And we refer to the brain and the spinal cord as the central nervous system. So that's the first one, central nervous system. A lot of times if we need to process information, it has to run through this. But before we can even process information, we need to get information there. And that's where your different kinds of neurons come in. The first kind, will someone tell me what is the name of the neuron that helps to transmit signals to the central nervous system? Okay, ready? Paris? Yeah, we give you an MCQ. So you usually have a few options. You have sensory neuron, then you have relay neuron, and then last one you have motor neuron. So these are usually the three you have to work with. The first one, as the name suggests, is to sense. Okay, so sensory neurons have to sense things from the world so that you can transmit the signal to the central nervous system. The next neuron that comes into play are relay neurons. Relay neurons' function is really just to bridge the gap between what is sensing and what is going to help to act. So I'm going to use purple to draw my relay neurons. So for example, I may have a relay neuron that goes downwards. Okay? And this relay neuron may then connect to a motor neuron. And that may cause me to kick, for example, or do something. So the difference in the sensory neuron and the motor neuron is really in what it connects. The sensory neuron brings stimulus to the central nervous system. The motor neuron brings a nerve impulse away from the central nervous system. To where? Motor neurons can connect to many things. It doesn't just connect to muscle. It can connect to even glands. The glands you just learned from the previous system. It can connect to endocrine glands. It can connect to exocrine glands. It could be that when I see something tasty, the sensory neuron from my eyes will send a signal to the brain, and from there there will be a relay neuron that will send a signal to my mouth. And then the motor neuron will send a signal to my salivary glands to squirt out saliva. Okay? So these three neurons work together in this way. One to sense, one to relay information to the motor, which will then help to control the effector. And the effector could be a gland, could be a muscle, anything that can bring about an action. And therefore, we have a name for these branches coming out. We refer to those neurons in the periphery, the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system comprises of all the sensory neurons and the motor neurons that are branching out. So if you look at this diagram on the screen, all of those wiring that's coming out of the central nervous system, those are all periphery. Periphery means at the side of. Central means at the center. And actually what's at our center is just the cord and the brain. So there is two ways you can divide the nervous system. Yesterday, I was rummaging through the bio lab, and then the lab technician told me that there's a whole row of drawers with specimens inside. So I went in now to see what I can find. I found lots of things. I even found a jar with a dissected rabbit with all its organs laid out, just posed there. I found like taxidermy animals, from a hedgehog to a bird to a squirrel. I found skeletons here and there, and I thought, therefore, the most important skeleton we should look at in this chapter would be human is not a skeleton. A skulls. Yeah, I found a whole box of skulls. I was trying to find human skull, but I didn't find a human skull. But I found a whole lot of other skulls. Okay? Yeah, I think this may be a goat. I'm going to pass these skulls around. After that, may I request that before you go for recess and put food in your mouth, that you wash your hands. Okay, these skulls are very old. So, I mean, yeah, dirty lah. Okay, so that's what I mean. Okay, as you pass the skulls around, I want you to pay attention to a few things. Number one, look at the skull. Actually, you can find zigzag lines along the skull. That is where how the pieces of the skull come together. It's like jigsaw. But the next thing I want you to look at is the eye sockets. If you look at the eye sockets, right, there are actually holes that will lead to where the brain is housed inside. That's because we need sensory neurons to go to the brain. Other than that, I want you to look at the back of every skull. In the back of every skull, you'll find a hole. This is where the spinal cord will come out from. In this cord, you will find lots of relay neurons that will run down your spine so that it can eventually link up to all the motor neurons that will control your arms, your legs, and so on and so forth. Okay? So look out for those holes that lead to where the brain is, because that's the important one. So here I think I have a goat skull. This one is likely some sort of a dog. You can see the teeth, the canine. Why you laugh? I don't know if this is funny. Yeah? Okay, you can see the canine. We put in some springs so that you can. Why are you laughing? Oh, I can see why now. Okay, handle it with care. Yeah, quite old. This skull over here also looks like it's part of those goat, horse, those kind of that category of skull. Okay, so look out for all the holes. Those holes that lead direct to the brain, that's where all the sensory neurons, the relay neurons will branch in and out from. Wait, pass it on. I know you love it a lot. Okay, here's another one. I think it's all the same. If you want to take out your phones, take some photo of these skulls, you want to pose with them, please go ahead. Okay, there you go. Oh look, I have one tiny skull here. I think from the looks of this is either belonging to I think it's likely some sort of, I don't know, like a rat or monkey or, I think the teeth are very fragile, so you have to be careful with that. Actually, if I'm not wrong, the nose, right, if you look at the holes, right, I think it leads to the brain also. And I think there's a membrane there. If you were to poke stuff too deep in your nose, right, don't do that, it could puncture and go up to where your brain is. wash your hand after this, yeah? So if I had a human skull to show you, you would find similar features. At the eye sockets, there should be 2 holes that lead to the brain, inside the brain, and there should be a hole at the back where the spinal cord comes up from. There shouldn't be mucus.
Then why is the weird stuff inside the nose?
I mean, given it's so old, right, I can only conclude that it may be fungus. Yes. Okay, if you're done with the scalps, you pass to the front, and I'm going to keep them. Next time, whenever the chapter is relevant, I will go into that cabinet again to find other stuff. For some reason, there are a lot of dissected earthworms in jars inside the cupboard. I went to ask why. They said last time, part of biology is to learn about the anatomy of earthworm. So there will be a lab where everyone will get one earthworm, then they will split it down, and then they will open up, and then they will show all the nerves and the digestive system, so on and so forth. Last time also, it is part of biology syllabus to know every part of the human skeleton. Yeah. But we've taken that out because it's just heavy memory work. And so I think that's why we bought so many skulls. This is all inside you, by the way. No, I mean not these skulls, but. In the next part of the lesson, let's introduce and go to the last 2 divisions I expect you to know about. These 2 divisions of the nervous system, like inside, okay, inside the nose, you tend to find a lot of small little bones. Those bones inside, right, I think they are mainly to help divide the nose channel. So like, it goes down 2 ways, Yeah. It may not be bone in fact, it may also be cartilage that was kept there. Like over here, right, what you feel here, that is not bone. I mean, that's a different kind of bone, it's soft bone, it's cartilage. Okay? You don't smell it, I don't know what fungus is on it, Now the new series that is very hype on HBO Max is The Last of Us, right? It's all about fungus infecting people's brains. Okay, so last but not least, the last 2 divisions. You want to hold your bladder a bit for the last 2 divisions? Oh, okay, just hold it. Okay. And after that, you'll go wash hands. Okay, so the last 2 divisions last 2 divisions of the nervous system is really about what it connects to.
The peripheral nervous system can be divided into somatic and visceral subdivisions.
Okay, I say again. The peripheral nervous system, we can split it into 2 more categories. And the 2 categories go like that.
The somatic nervous system includes sensory nerves from the skin, muscles, bones, and joints, and motor nerves that innervate skeletal muscles. This system controls voluntary muscular contractions, as well as involuntary somatic reflexes. The visceral nervous system, on the other hand, includes sensory division that detects changes in the viscera. the organs in the thoracic and abdominal cavities, and motor division that controls cardiac muscle, smooth muscle of internal organs, and glands. It produces, for example, faster heart rate and breathing rate during physical exercise, and slower cardiorespiratory rate during sleep. The visceral motor division is also known as the autonomic nervous system because it is largely autonomous, acting independently of the body's consciousness and voluntary control.
Okay, so we pause here. Last but not least, the peripheral nervous system can be split into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The main difference between these two is in what the effectors they are controlling of. Because for the somatic nervous system, what it connects to, all the motor neurons, are your skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are muscles that are wrapping around your skeleton. So for example, my jaw muscles are skeletal muscles. My bicep muscles are skeletal muscles. Those at my toes are skeletal muscles. Notice, these are also the muscles you can control. So you use the somatic nervous system to control these skeletal muscles. But there are parts of the body you do not voluntarily control. And those include things like your organs. It's not like right now you're thinking, I need to churn my food in my stomach. It's not like you're thinking, I need to squirt up some insulin into my bloodstream. It's all very tiring, right? So we have another division of the nervous system, the autonomic ones. These connect to the parts of the parts of your body that you do not want to control consciously. For example, it connects to your glands. It connects to your cardiac muscles, which are muscles of the heart. It will be quite tiring if you have to think of every heartbeat. It connects to what we call smooth muscles. Smooth muscles are muscles found within your body that you do not control. For example, your blood vessels have muscles. Those are muscles that you do not control. Okay, so these are examples of things that you control involuntarily by the autonomic nervous system. And that's great, you don't have to think so much. All you really need to think of controlling are the muscles that envelope your skeleton. Okay, can I give you a quick 3 minutes? Go and wash your hands if you want to, or use wet wipes. Alright, then after come back and we'll continue on. Still holding on to one. You all use wet wipes? Oh, you didn't touch it? Are you okay when you see both? Sure, sure. How you see? Okay. So where is she now? Just sitting there. Oh. So where's this one now?
Hi, I'm Yulia. I'm here in Kiev, where I was studying in the last 6 days. It was
then why are you asking if it?
Because sometimes it's like natural, like you have to think about it and then when you start it.
Yeah, fair enough. So actually, therefore, when you want to categorize into these two categories, what would be a stronger determining factor? I think you're right. Yeah. So what do you think is stronger determining?
Whether we can like control it, like when we choose to control it, whether we can.
Okay, and whether you can choose to control. Yeah. But as you see, something on the somatic nervous system, it may not be that you need to always control it. Like a blink, for example. Sometimes your reflex you just blink, right? So personally, I feel a good way to tell whether it's somatic or nervous or autonomic is whether it is part of your connected to your bone. Yeah, these are muscles of the skull. Yeah, so like your jaw, your eyelids, these are muscles of the skull. So that's why I think you have control over it. So okay, seems everyone's back. Most. Kara asked an interesting question. She asked, the muscles in your eyelid, are they part of the somatic or autonomic? Both? I have not googled this before. I'm not very sure. But I like to think, I agree with Kara, that it's part of somatic. Because you seem to have control over it, right? At the same time, your eyelid muscles are connected to your skull, which is bone, skeletal. So I think when we look at these two categories, one way to look at it is you think along the lines of voluntary, involuntary. But that is not the full truth, it's a misconception. I say again, it is a misconception to think that the somatic nervous system only controls what is voluntary. It can control what is involuntary too. For example, I can right now do this. This is voluntary. But earlier on, when I give it a knock and it kicks out by itself, that was involuntary. But it all uses skeletal muscle. So I say again, it is a misconception to think that the somatic nervous system only controls what is voluntary. It can control involuntary things too. But what is common here is that we deal with the skeletal muscles. So going to Kara's point, when you blink, is that under somatic or autonomic? I think it's somatic. It can both be controlled in an involuntary way or voluntary way. Yes?
You know, sometimes you do stuff like involuntarily, but it's a voluntary action. Like if I touch my hand, it's involuntary. So muscle memory is that which one is it power?
Okay, what do you think? You use your hands to touch your face, right?
Yeah, but it's involuntary.
Okay. So I say again, it is a misconception to think that all involuntary actions are controlled by autonomic. There are involuntary actions that can be controlled by somatic too. So I feel the better way to distinguish between these two is what it connects to. Somatic connects to the skeletal muscles. And your skeletal muscles can be controlled voluntarily or involuntarily. Okay? I feel like this is not getting in your head. Yeah, wait. So I write on the whiteboard explicitly. So somatic can be voluntary or involuntary. Autonomic is always just voluntary, involuntary. Voluntary. Zuni?
Okay, the internet generally classifies like thinking and breathing as autonomic, but like they acknowledge that it's an integration of autonomic and voluntary neural.
So later on there's one poll, so I want you to think about whether it's autonomic or not. I did also try to Google. I cannot find sources that say that a particular control is part of both, right? So I was trying to fit in either one also. I think reading has both because we'll talk about it in a while. So right now, I would like to do a quick poll. There are 3 different things that happen that you are able to do. You can your heart can beat, you can type your iPad, breathing in and out. Which nervous system do you think is being used? Then we'll come back to Zuni's point. Let's look at beating of the heart. Many of you feel it's autonomic. Some feel it is somatic. Beating of the heart is actually controlled by your autonomic nervous system. Yeah, say again. Beating of the heart is controlled by autonomic nervous system. There's no way you can control the beating of your heart. Let's go to the next poll. What about you typing on your iPad? Many of you say it's somatic. And that's true. Because when you type on your iPad, you're controlling the skeletal muscles of your skeleton of the fingers. Yeah? As well as your forearm skeleton. Last one is an interesting one, which I myself have been struggling to try and find out. But I've come to a conclusion of my own. This one is a little bit more people thinking it's somatic. A lot think it's autonomic. Who here feels it's somatic? Okay. Jeanette, why do you think it's somatic? Okay, somatic. But autonomic is the automatic one. Okay, Jeanette says when she's sleeping, right, and sometimes she thinks I need to breathe, then she has to start controlling it, right? Felt that before? Okay, everyone, I want you to breathe in. See right now you're controlling already. Okay. Who thinks it's autonomic? Yeah? Okay. Tuni, why do you think so?
Because when you're sleeping, you're like unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're sleeping, not really doing anything much. But you are somehow it's still breathing, right? So how? I did not give an option of both. Right? Could it be both? Okay, then I'm struggling also to figure out how could it be both? Okay, then yes. Oh yeah?
Is it like
I really cannot find this very well on the internet. If you all manage to find out, let us know. I think it is a matter of us switching which one we want to use. Okay, this is what I think. When you breathe in, when you consciously control yourself, you notice that part of breathing requires muscles of your ribs. And muscles of the ribs aren't these skeletal muscles. Right? So I think when you are controlling your breathing, what you are actually doing is that you are controlling the ribs muscles. But when you are not so much thinking about it, your body is actually using an internal muscle that you have that you do not have really a control over, even though the quiet people may disagree. That muscle is called the diaphragm. That muscle is very important for breathing. In fact, most of the air that you inhale is a result of your diaphragm contracting and relaxing. Not really your ribs. Your ribs don't get to change the volume that much. This muscle is inside. Actually, that muscle I do not think you really have control over. For quiet people that say you do have control, I think that what you're actually doing is when you kick your ab muscles, right? You tense your ab muscles as you sing, you're actually forcing your internal organs upwards and you're pushing against the diaphragm and that forces air out. I do not think you are exactly controlling the diaphragm muscles. Hiya?
is it like the sensory neuron is like responsible for like what you feel, right? When you feel pain, how come some people can tolerate more than others?
Then I guess it goes down to what you are defining tolerate to be. Tolerate, is it that they decide not to act on it?
Like maybe like spicy, some people can take it.
Okay, what I've learned, right, because in university I took a module on neuroscience that actually nerve impulses, you can get used to it. So if you keep sending the same nerve impulse over and over again, your brain may the nerve impulse will become less strong once it hits the brain. So first time round, it may be detected, go to the brain, it will be sensed as something very important, and you'll send a very strong nerve impulse out to your motor neurons. But if you keep repeating the same action, sometimes right, these nerve impulses will be weakened because they see it as actually this is something I've done before, not that too much to worry. That is called acclimatization. Sometimes you just get used to something and you don't really react to it anymore. Okay, let us use the remaining time of our lesson today to do some practice, make progress. For those who are done with practice makes progress, you may then progress to the exit pass, where I'd love to answer your fun and eccentric questions. These are very fundamental, basic questions that just test your understanding of what we learned so far. They ask you which row correctly identifies the function. Earlier on, Finya asked what depth you need to know the functions. I would say to a depth that allows you to understand how a neuron works. That is sufficient. So, for example, this question is a classic example of how I show you the functions related to the structure. Okay, Roki, what's your answer for this? A. Number one being the dendrites, it receives nerve impulses. And I think we haven't figured out how to remember this yet. But two is pointing to the myelin sheath, so it enables faster transmission of nerve impulse. 3 is the axon terminal. That's where it sends nerve impulses to either the muscle or gland or so on and so forth. We go to the next question. Next question requires you to. Next question shows you how 3 neurons are connected to each other. Can you tell which neuron is which? This is where your ability to differentiate between the characteristics come in. Because we like to draw very simplified models of each type of neuron. But actually, we do hit the main characteristics. Okay? So PQ and R, just look for 3 students. Hai, will you give me either one? Okay, try. Use the logic that you have. Sensory neuron need to sense something, right? Motor neuron needs to therefore control an effector. Relay neuron will have to be something that connects the sensory to the motor. So you just choose one. Yeah, it's R. The what? You just whacking already, yeah? Okay, what if I told you this action that's happening here, right, is this person first need to sense something at the hand. After that, sensing from the hand, this person then wants to be able to control the muscle of the arm to pull away. Yeah? Okay, so what's what? Okay, so P points to this neuron, Q and R. Okay, so you notice that there's one neuron here that goes from the skin and then goes to the central nervous system. Here's another neuron, and then here's another neuron that branches to the muscle. Each of the neuron, notice, we draw one circle with a dot, that's the cell body and the nucleus. What do you think, Hai?
I think Q is the relay.
Q is relay, okay? Hai thinks Q is the relay neuron. Why do you think so? Okay, so actually that's a great way to remember. Relay neurons tend to be in the middle of 2 neurons. Okay? Another thing. Okay, no, that's it. So now we left with sensory and motor, right? Siqi, choose either or. Can you tell P and R which one might be sensory, which one is motor? P is sensory. Please share with us your train of thinking. Make sense? Yeah? Okay. So it makes sense that P is the sensory because the skin of your hand is what needs to sense the environment. Right? Likely there are receptors on your skin that help you sense. Last but not least, this last one here will have to be a motor neuron. It's connected to something you can control. A muscle. I could change this question by replacing this muscle with a gland. Right? I could replace it with endocrine gland, an exocrine gland, maybe a muscle, maybe a heart muscle. These are all things you can control. Okay? Here's another clue. Sensory neurons, their cell body, you can write this down, tends to be somewhere in the middle. Whereas you look at the cell body of the motor neuron and relay neuron, they tend to be at the extreme end. Okay? I say again, sensory neuron, the cell body tends to be in the middle. This is a clue. This is a very important clue because another question I could ask you is, can you draw arrows to show me the direction of flow of a nerve impulse through these 3 neurons? Are you able to? Ask again. Are you able to draw arrows to show the direction of flow of nerve impulse through these 3 neurons, such that the person can detect using the skin and then after that control the arm muscle after? Can you? If you like to, copy paste this image, put it in your OneNote, and then you draw the arrows. I won't go through the answer, but you can discuss with your friend how the arrow should flow through all this. Okay, there are really only 2 ways it can flow, right? It can either flow from your muscle to your skin, or your skin to your muscle. I think it's a bit weird if it flows from your muscle to your skin. I'd love to take questions from you now. Can I ask a question? If you break your spinal cord, are you basically paralyzed for life? You are. I think the economists always hear me share this story. I have a good friend who jumped into Sentosa, the water, just because of the angle that he landed in. One of the spine, the column broke. So everything from, he said either the second or third, everything from here onwards is not able to receive sensors anymore or to send out motor neuron impulses. Everything from here onwards, somewhere in his shoulder area. So he can still control his shoulders and he can control his biceps because all these neurons are still above the spinal cord where he severed everything. Everything below, he actually cannot receive impulses or control them anymore. Okay, so protect your spinal cord because depending on where the spinal injury is, it really affects where you can control. And so actually there are different levels of spinal injury. If you injure somewhere at the top, the higher the injury, the worse off it is. The higher the injury means everything below you cannot control or sense anymore. The lower the injury, that means everything below, the leg onwards, you cannot sense or control. Okay? Is there a cure to this? I would assume that if somehow you are able to create artificial neurons that can bridge the gap, technically you could fix this. If I'm not wrong, there are some scientists that have done this artificial stitching using real electrical signals and robots. So now what they do is they attach electrodes to the brain and then to parts of the body, and then they have wires to draw the connection between. So you do see people now, engineers, able to help people who are paralyzed control their arms again. But these are all in preliminary stages, and the tech is very expensive at the moment. Henry asked, do we need to know the different structures of the different types of neurons? Know it to the extent that you can differentiate. Just now you know the last question. If I ask you to differentiate, can you differentiate?
The relay and the motor is
So other than the structure, notice what it connects to is important. Right? So know it to the extent that you can differentiate, but not to the extent where you have to describe every aspect of it. Shreya asked, if we eat frog legs, then how does neurons get digested? What are neurons? Neurons are cells. Cells are made up of your biomolecules, the cell membrane, lipids, right? The nucleus also lipid membrane, right? Inside there are many proteins. The cell may also contain glycogen, which is a carbohydrate. So when you ask, how do we digest the neurons? Actually the question is, how do we digest cells? The same way we digest the chicken cells that we eat. Same way that we digest any other animal or plant things that we eat. Using enzymes. Yeah, enzymes will digest all these. Break them down into their monomers. Kiran asks, can one neuron only be connected to two other neurons at a time? Interesting question. So, for example, what we see so far is this, right? One neuron, the relay neuron, connected to two neurons, sensory and motor, right? Can it connect only to two? No. In a real life situation, one neuron can actually connect to many neurons. So it could be that this relay neuron is not just receiving information from one sensory neuron, it could be receiving from many, many others. All of them channeling the signal to the relay neuron. Okay? But we only show you a simple connection so that it's easier for you to make sense of. But if you study this in university, you'll find that the signals connect very vastly. And so that's why if you do damage or hurt a part of your body, you very often can still control it. Because you may have damaged a few nerves, but there are still other neurons that are functioning. Let's see new cards. Any more questions? Shemaine asks, does it mean that every neuron that does not belong to the autonomic nervous system is connected to the spinal cord? I need to process this up. Does it mean every neuron that does not belong to the autonomic nervous system? Oh, okay. Because, Shamit, correct me if I'm wrong, you're thinking if it's autonomic means you don't need to think about it. Therefore, doesn't it connect to the brain, right? Okay. So, something that's autonomic doesn't mean that it doesn't connect to the brain. It just means that it bypasses the thinking process. It just goes through sensory to relay to motor and immediately go out. There is no processing inside your brain. Don't think about it. Yeah, but it can go through the brain because there are a lot of things that you involuntarily do that bypass the brain. For example, when you are looking at me, your eye is actually controlling the depth. If I step further away, your eye adjusts so that you can still see me clearly. I go close to you, it adjusts to see me clearly. That is all autonomic. It bypasses the brain immediately so that you can control it very fast without thinking. Every neuron is connected either to the spinal cord or to the brain. Yeah. And inside the spinal cord, the brain, it can either bypass the thinking process or it can stay there for a short while to think and then to send out another signal. Relay neurons tend to be within the brain and the spinal cord. They help to bridge the gap between the sensory and motor neurons. So I can have sensory neurons going in and then motor neurons going out, but I need relay neurons to bridge the gap. Okay, so when you ask, do every neuron, do you mean every type? No, the sensory neurons and motor neurons tend to be the periphery. The relay neurons are the ones that do all the connection in between, right? Because there are a lot of sensory neurons branching in, but they do not go all the way in. Answer your question? Shavika? Okay, Shavika asks, is it possible for sensory neuron immediately to connect to a motor neuron? There are such cases. In fact, if I'm not wrong, I think it's in your notes, there is one such connection. You can help me know your notes. It may be that the knee one, right, when you hit the knee, that one just sensory direct to motor. Is it? You scroll down to reflexes. A bit more. Page 11. Okay. Yeah, okay, so you scroll down. Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah. The knee jerk reflex, the knee jerk reflex, Shavika just writes, it is just sensory connect directly to motor. No relay involved. Extremely fast. Okay. So perhaps the other question should be, do we always need a relay neuron to bridge the gap between sensory and motor? Not always. New questions? Okay, I think a few more questions before we end the day. Since he asked, why does your hair stand up when you get electrocuted? Have you been electrocuted before? Then where do you see that from? Common sense. Let me try to draw some reason up. For your hair to stand, it requires a muscle to contract. Actually, inside your skin, where your hair branches out from, there is actually a muscle that's connected to it. When the muscle contracts, okay, when this muscle contracts, it actually makes the hair stand. So I would like to postulate that perhaps when someone gets electrocuted, it causes the neurons, the motor neurons to be stimulated, that stimulate these muscles, and then after that the hair stands. Yeah. So I think I do not think the electricity directly goes through the hair and then make it stand. I think it is more of it's controlling the muscles that make it stand. Nabila asks, is there a limit to a number of nerve impulses that can be sent at a time? That's an interesting question that I do not have an answer to. I do know that nerve impulses is not that they wait for one to travel from one end to the other, then the next one can go. It could be continuously one after another, sending right, like choo-choo train right behind. Okay? So if that, does that answer the question? Yeah. It doesn't have to wait for it to complete. It can be continuously sending. Okay, tomorrow's lesson, we will go into the next part of our lesson. We're going to learn about reflexes. Reflexes are about you controlling your body without thinking. Okay, that's what reflexes are. After that lesson, next week, next week Thursday, oh yeah, we have lesson. Next week Thursday, it's not HBR, right? Next week Thursday, I'll see you at the lab. We will learn about the eyeball. And then I will dissect eyeball for all of you to see. Okay? If you are squeamish, I ask that you mentally prepare yourself for next. Okay? If you're not comfortable next week, after I dissect, you come up to the stage to touch the various parts, then just go. Yeah? So I can take photos. Okay, that's all for it today. Thank you, class.